you guys are right. Tell me if I'm leaping somewhere I shouldn't be here, but what should happen is that whatever energy is expended in the production of Bitcoin and the maintenance of the system should be more than recouped by the increased efficiency of every system that used Bitcoin as a transactional device. And so the net energy, there'll be a net energy gain, not a net energy loss, if you calculated it across the entire system. And so it's a mistake just to look at the cost of generating Bitcoin in the absence of considering the efficiencies that Bitcoin would produce.
And the same is true for gold as well. You know, like it takes a lot of energy to extract gold from the ground. And historically, society in general answered this question in the affirmative. Yes, it's way worth it. Like it's worth to dig this up. And
right, but there were limits, right? Because once the ore becomes insufficiently rich, at some point you stop refining it. So there's a limit. But according to your logic, at least, the limit on the energy expenditure that Bitcoin produces should be produced by the market response to Bitcoin, not by some fiat judgment about whether or not it's like ecologically sustainable, because that's just a guess. And the best indicator that we have for ecological stability is going to be cumulative free market decisions, even though those aren't necessarily very good. They're better than anything else we could possibly generate rationally.
And just to clarify one point, and then I'll let Robert dig into this. Bitcoin doesn't take energy because the production of Bitcoin takes energy. The production of Bitcoin, it's an emission schedule, so it's constant. We know when the last Bitcoin will be mined. It's going to be around in 2140, and it doesn't matter how much energy you expend. It won't go quicker. It won't go slower. So if you dig harder for it, it will be harder to find, and if you stop digging for it, it will get easier to find. So that's the genius invention of the difficulty adjustment. So there is no one-to-one link of Bitcoin production and energy expended. The energy is used for different things, for its security, for example. And Robert, I think you want to say a few things.
Yeah, I'll try to dovetail and tie some things together. So the general tenet here is there is no value in money without sacrifice. There has to be an energy expenditure to secure the supply of money or the network of money. That's what ensures against its corruption, basically. Mm-hmm. And if we zoom out,
it wouldn't cost anything.
That's right. And someone would just arbitrarily suck value out of it by printing it, right? That's what the central bank is designed to do. So if we zoom out a little further, we could say the entire purpose of the world economy is to increase collective energy efficiency. That's why we are trading and specializing. Yep. That's what profits are, actually, right? It's an indication that we've
energy
provided, we've satisfied a want more efficiently. And that rewarded profits to the entrepreneur that then invites more competition, more production, et cetera, et cetera. So back to John's point, the entrepreneur, this is the individual element that courageously faces the chaos of nature, right? With his skin in the game, his own capital plans, et cetera, trying to convert it into good and useful order. The entrepreneur is the living hero myth. And that's what the free market honors. It honors the sacrifices that entrepreneurs go out into the world and make for us, whereas something like a bureaucracy is antithetical to that. So to get back to your point about why central banking, how did we allow it to happen? I boil it down to this, is that even the entrepreneur, he's pursuing something for nothing. He's trying to find a way to satisfy wants more cheaply, more efficiently, to enrich himself and to enrich others. That axis you talk about between chaos and order, good and evil, right? We're all pursuing something for nothing, but there's a point where you can cross that axis into the domain of evil, where it's intentionally harmful to others to benefit ourselves. I think that's what central banking has done, right? It's the entrepreneur wants something for nothing by figuring out how to provide a good or service, but so does the central bank. But it's crossed that divide to where it's actually economically harming others to give its shareholders, its private shareholders, a perpetual economic free lunch. It has no sacrifice in the money creation process. It pays a dividend to undisclosed shareholders. It's a parasite on the productive economy, effectively. And I would say that no one is better than their incentives, right? It's not like, how did we let this happen? It's like there was just an attack vector on gold. There's technological shortcomings of gold that allowed it to be corrupted. That's how we got the central bank built on top of gold. So I think by introducing Bitcoin, a money that's really hard to steal in terms of inflation or confiscation, it pushes us to be more hardworking as a society, because that is the only profitable strategy. We become entrepreneurial. Whereas if money is easy to steal, like it is under the central bank model via inflation, we slide towards kleptocracy. right? And that's what you see. Even Elon, he's very close to the fiat
Yeah, I
currency
like the we terminology
press.
a lot better, you know, because it does, you make a case there, you make a case for a kind of technological inadequacy, is that as a species, we haven't been able to generate a sufficiently incorruptible language of value. And that has produced all sorts of negative consequences, some of which you're outlining. It's a problem that we all have. Okay, so practically speaking, guys, Bitcoin, it's not easy to spend. It's not, you can't go into a store and spend it. Like, it doesn't have that portability that you described, Robert, as a cardinal element of a necessary currency. And it isn't obvious to me that it's been rapidly moving in that direction, but that may be a mere consequence of my ignorance. Or my time scale. Maybe it'll happen in 10 years, and that's virtually instant from a historical perspective. I mean, do you think Bitcoin can leap the gap between its, what would you say, somewhat
store
idiosyncratic
exchange?
Yes, that's right, exactly.
Can I just hop in real quick on the last point before we answer this, and then we'll get to it? But Jordan, you mentioned is this energy expenditure and the environmental issues around Bitcoin, is it worthwhile, right? And as you said, the market is the best thing to determine whether something is worthwhile or not. I tend to think of our impact on the planet not as the planet in isolation, but as in human flourishing. I mean, isn't that what we should be looking at when we talk about the environment? Not just is the natural world harmed in some way, but is our relation...
Well, otherwise we're just talking about maximizing someone's ideological perception, right?
Exactly.
This is what the environment should be.
Right. So I think our question should be, what is basically the ratio between the consumption of resources and the human flourishing that it nets? And I think that money, because it's the thing that allows you to determine the relative worthwhileness of everything else, it means that there is nothing more important than that object. So whatever the free market selects as the money, the resources used to instantiate that, to perpetuate it, are definitionally worthwhile because it permits the relative valuation of everything else downstream of it. I just wanted to get that piece out.
Yeah, a fair point.
If I might jump in terms of like, you can't go to the corner shop and spend your Bitcoin. I would say, that's a fair criticism, but that was true 20 years ago for e-commerce and other technologies. So it happens gradually then suddenly. Like that was the same criticism, was like, what am I going to do with a smartphone? What am I going to do with the internet?
Electricity.
Like it doesn't work yet, Yeah, and electricity, a lot of Bitcoiners or some Bitcoiners like to use this metaphor because Bitcoin is also a network and electricity is also a network. So you have network effects and they take a while to grow. But Bitcoin is very usable already, and there are a lot of people already living on a Bitcoin standard. So they are earning Bitcoin, they are spending Bitcoin, they're using Bitcoin day to day. Currently, because we are still in this early adoption phase, and Bitcoin is an exponential technology built upon other exponential technologies, so it lives on the internet and it uses like smartphones and other devices that are exponential in nature to propagate itself, then it will just take a while until it is ubiquitous. But I think also it is unstoppable, just like the internet was. The internet dematerialized all kinds of things, and it just took a little bit to play out. And Netflix wasn't possible from day one. And video Zoom calls that we are having right now weren't possible from day one. And very similarly, Bitcoin is evolving and building itself up in layers. And currently, its main use is as a censorship resistant money. If you are not allowed to have a bank account for whatever reason, Bitcoin serves you very well. And if you want to have a long-term store of value, Bitcoin is an excellent choice of store of value as well. And just look at the data, like historically, year over year, Bitcoin compared to the US dollar gained 200%. So if you put some money in Bitcoin, if you have done that in the past, you are better off than having money on the bank account or under your mattress because of the inflationary nature of fiat currencies that we discussed. And I think it will just continue to evolve just like the internet did, and people will find it useful for various different reasons. And
now you regard it as unstoppable. And so on what basis do you make that claim? Why do you believe that?
Bitcoin is pure information. It is pure information, and also the system that is running it, like the asset itself is pure information. I can store 12 words in my head and I have Bitcoin in my head, literally. So it is very useful in that regard. That's what makes it that what makes it virtually resistant to nobody can take it away from you. Like if you secure it properly, Bitcoin has certain properties that allows you to make sure that you and only you can spend the Bitcoin. And on the system side of things, the Bitcoin network itself, it's just computer code. And so it's just information. And we as a society are very good at making sure that important information that various people regard as important, survives. So we often like to compare Bitcoin to other informational texts, just like the Bible, for example, that outlast empires, because it is very hard to destroy pure information if it is distributed well enough. And the whole reason for the Bitcoin system to work in that complicated manner that it does is because it maximizes decentralization. It maximizes censorship resistance. The whole idea of the Bitcoin system is to build something that they can't stop, and it doesn't matter who they are. So it's to build a system that we as humanity can't stop. Exactly.
Right. To build a system that we can't. Well, so that's kind of an interesting conundrum there too. You kind of ask yourself, there's no shortage of dire science fiction predictions about the buildings of systems that we can't even stop. Downsides to Bitcoin. Well, how about the facilitation of criminal activity, underground criminal activity, for example? And like if you guys put your heads together and you had to critique Bitcoin as a social danger, what would you say? Oh, there's definitely the criminal element, which seems immediately relevant.
I would say it's the same as with every powerful tool. Like a chef's knife is a very dangerous weapon, but you can also prepare beautiful meals with it. And we have to kind of make sure to wield these powerful tools directly. But it's also kind of, like the genie is out of the bottle. We kind of have to, just like with the internet, like the internet and every other technology before it, it's just a tool. It can be used for good and bad. And there's plenty of crime facilitated online as well. And, like I don't even want to go into bank robberies and cars that were early adopted by bank robbers so that they can run away faster. So I think that would be my answer to that question.
And Jordan, just very quickly on that one, in your writing and such, you detail how the religious traditions, particularly Christianity in our case, have informed the legal system. And one of the very special ways that it's done so is that it sanctifies the sovereignty of the individual, even if that individual has obviously committed a crime. They are given the right of due process. They are presumed innocent until proven guilty. And this is a technology that fundamentally sanctifies the sovereignty of every individual. And what they choose to do with that sovereignty is their choice. Yes,
right,
as a
but
society, you're
also making a case, all of you, that the very act of Bitcoin sanctifying the sovereignty of the individual is actually tilting individuals towards doing something good rather than something bad. That it's not just neutral, as Gigi was laying it out, that there's an intrinsic ethic to Bitcoin that is more likely to tilt it in a positive direction, which would be a more powerful rejoinder to the Bitcoin equals criminality criticism. So the question is that, that's what I'm trying to wrestle with here is, okay, so let's accept your proposition that Bitcoin is an incorruptible currency. And that seems fair enough. I mean, I can't come up with an obvious rejoinder to that. And then, so that means that we have an incorruptible language of value that enables us to make better decisions. Well, we do use money to make decisions. I mean, sometimes when I'm trying to decide whether I'll do one thing or another, I'll do the thing that makes more money because I can't decide any other way, right? It's an obvious way of picking one thing over another when they're relatively commensurate. Other people seem to value it more because they'll pay more for it. So it's actually helpful as it's a helpful cognitive tool, pricing, obviously, because it simplifies decision-making to a tremendous degree. So it's integrally involved with decision-making.
You could make the case that in an economy or in a market that's properly constituted and structured, i.e. people's expression of their values is not corrupted, that you following that signal of something being more financially rewarding is moving toward the good. Because the good is the aggregation of all.
That's really what's at the bottom of this, as far as I was concerned. That's what got me so intrigued by what you were thinking, because that's an unbelievably radical claim.